Oh, take these off. And that's that. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of, let me just see if I'm muted. Nope, I'm not. My name is Ryan McCarthy. I'm your host of No Credentials Required Friday Happy Hour, presented by Belly Up Sports, an association locally in the 518 area with Godzilla Media. Before we get into tonight's episode, just want to remind you to go on our social handles right here below. On Twitter and Instagram, it's BellyUpNCR. Facebook.com/BellyUpSportsNCR. On YouTube, No Credentials Required. If you're listening on the podcast side, give a listen, subscribe, like, and share on any podcast platform, including Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Podchaser. And if you'd be so kind of leave the show a review, I'd appreciate it. And on YouTube side, again, same thing. Subscribe, hit the notifications bell. That way you know if clips from the show come up or if No Credentials Required Friday Happy Hour goes live. That being said, let's get into our beer of the week. I just want to give you the topics for tonight. We're talking about the most recent 30 for 30 from ESPN about the 86 Mets, called Once Upon a Time in Queens. Talking about some teams who, I guess in the 80s, I'm old enough to remember the 86 Mets. I was about 9 years old when they won the World Series title, but I also thought about some teams from the 80s, kind of thinking back in my memory, which teams they only won one title and could have won more, but didn't. So I got at my memory bank. And if you're watching out there, if you want to comment, leave a comment, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Periscope. Leave a comment. Some of my audience isn't old enough to remember the 86 Mets. Some of them know about other teams that kind of were star-crossed after their first and only title and just didn't quite make it to their next title. So if you're in the comment section, we'll talk about that some more. I'm going to talk about a radical idea I have for Major League Baseball, spurring off from the most recent episode of Gods on the Go on Godzilla Media. So you want to check him out, go right ahead and please do so. And we're also going to go through my week 2 NFL picks, because week 2 is coming up, and we already started it last night with the Giants and the red team. Almost got in trouble there. The Giants and the red team, and the Washington red team comes up with a 1-point win at the buzzer, at the death, basically. And I just want to address that a little bit. So do my week 2 picks after, and then we'll try to kill some time with some other comments. So go ahead and start my beer of the week, and I have Cape Cod Beer Pilsner. Now you're wondering to yourself, Ryan, we don't have this area. You can't get Cape Cod beer in this area. I know. I know. And I got this I had a bet with a friend of mine, Russell, who was, shout out to him, who's in the 518 area. He's in Russell's Deli in Boston Spa. There's your free plug there, Russell. I bet he's been in a deli. His deli's been around for about 13 years. I've been a customer of his, and whenever I'd stop by and we talk sports, he'd have sports posters on the wall at his deli, and he's a big Yankees fan. He's a big Rangers fan. For some reason, he's a Minnesota Vikings fan. I can't figure that out for the life of me. So, but he's got stuff. He's got memorabilia, sports memorabilia on his walls. He's got John Bon Jovi's stuff. He's got Bruce Springsteen stuff, and I'm not a big fan of Bruce Springsteen, but for myriad of reasons. But we're friends enough that we've made bets with each other. And last year we made a bet. Because I'm a Devils fan, New Jersey Devils fan. He's a New York Rangers fan. Putting our first round rookies together and to see who had the most points. And last year, Capo Caco had the most points between Hughes. Actually, they tied in points, but we counted plus minus as part of the criteria for the tiebreaker, and he won Russell won the tiebreaker, so I got him a 6-pack of the Pinstripe Pils from Blue Point Brewing. And this year we continued our bet. Jack Hughes wound up winning that race with 31 points, took 17 by Capo Caco. And I said, hey, you never paid up my bet. And he's got a rental out in Cape Cod. So I said, hey, can you get me some Cape Cod beer while you're out there? He's like, yeah, absolutely. So I got the Cape Cod Pilsner from Cape Cod Beer, get the Bohemian Pilsner. I'm going to enjoy this with my fellow co-host, of course, the Mason jar. So let's crack one open. There we go. All right. Folks, that's the sound of the weekend. If you're more of a wine person, it's usually a cork bottle being opened. If you're a soda person, it's like as well, or unscrewing of the bottle. And if you're into water, no, just get it from the tap. All right. Cheers, folks. Been a long week back. Regular 5-day week. Interesting week, but here we are. Cheers, everyone. It's a solid Pilsner. Drink ice cold as they do. As you do. All right, before we get into everything before we talk about the most recent 30 for 30 from ESPN, Once Upon a Time in Brooklyn, just want to give you a quick word from one of our sponsors, Godzilla Media, and that is Mohawk Honda. The current supply and demand challenges within the auto industry makes this a perfect time for you to get top dollar for your vehicle. Right now at Mohawk Honda, you can take advantage of the Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer. They will put cash in your hand for your vehicle the same day you come in, even if you don't buy from them. It's a pretty sweet deal, especially for all those recent college grads or student in need of a new ride or some extra cash. Mohawk Honda has consistently kept their lot fully stocked with hundreds of pre-owned vehicles. Their large inventory makes shopping fun as you browse through the many makes and models to choose from. You can also check out their full selection online at mohawkhonda.com. Stop in and say hi to Greg Johnson, the Assistant General Manager, Jake, Hot Sauce, Doyle, Louie, the VIP Man Morales, or one of the many helpful sales consultants here at Mohawk Honda. You can also say hey to my salesman, Evan Zwalen, the Z-Man, Z-Money. You can also say hi to him. He was my salesman when I was he was my sales consultant, excuse me, when I got my 2016 Honda HR-V last March. He's very helpful and helped me select the right vehicle for me. There's a vast selection of Honda certified pre-owned vehicles, so now is the time to take advantage of the Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer. Mohawk Honda in Glenville, where they always go out of their way to please you. All right, so let's get into this episode. Talking about Once Upon a Time in Queens, another 30 for 30 from ESPN, and it was kind of it's a 4-part series. It was similar. I mean, the 4-part stocky series, kind of not similar to The Last Dance, where it basically revolved around Michael Jordan, but this was about. It had a few main characters. Main characters being Keith Hernandez was one of the main characters, Mookie Wilson, Darryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden. I can't remember his name for the life of me. Kevin Mitchell, Lenny Dykstra, Davey Johnson, those guys from the 1986 World Series. We're all about around them. I'll take it, and if you haven't watched it, I recommend you watch it. It's on ESPN Plus if you have a ESPN Plus subscription, or if you have on demand. If you have cable, you can watch it on demand, I suspect. But I remember so much from that team. So part 1 basically starts from the beginning of the franchise when both the Dodgers and the Giants moved out to California. You can have them. They both moved out to California. The Dodgers went to Los Angeles, and the Giants went to San Francisco, respectively. Fun fact about the San Francisco Giants, if you didn't know, they had their roots in Troy, New York. Look it up. But it starts from the beginning when the Mets franchise was born. basically out of necessity. And it was a necessity for National League Baseball in New York because both the Dodgers and the Giants were National League franchises. Crosstown Yankees were the American League stars of the American League stars. You had your Mickey Mantles, you had your Whitey Fords, Roger Maris's, Yogi Berra's. The Mets were kind of a bunch of nobodies for the first couple of years, except for their manager, Casey Stengel. He was basically the star of that team. But then the Mets started to put in the right pieces. In 1969, they won their first World Series, and it was on the backs of Tom Seaver, Nolan Ryan. He was part of the team when they won, and I think it was in the 69 team, not mistaken. Jerry Koosman, a bunch of those guys, and they went up win the World Series in 1969, and it was kind of an elation. It was a bit of an elation in that time. And then the 70s came along, and they went back to the World Series in 73, lost in 7 to Oakland, who was just a juggernaut back then. Raleigh Fingers, Reggie Jackson, Vida Blue, all those players from those Oakland Athletics teams, who originally started in Philadelphia, FYI. But yeah, no, they went to the 70s and all the bad times. Went to the 70s, and they had the Monday Massacre when Tom Seaver was traded to the Cincinnati Reds, and they brought him back in the 83 season, if I'm not mistaken. They brought him back in 83, coming home, and that was kind of when the Mets started to turn things around. They hired Cashman, who was their GM. He was the GM and it was the general manager in Baltimore. And Davey Johnson said, "I want the job. I want the manager's job." And he took the manager's job, and things kind of steamrolled from there. They brought in Keith Hernandez. They drafted Lee Mazzilli, brought him up from the minors. They trade for Gary Carter. And those two guys were basically the two pillars. They were the two linchpins for what started for the Mets. And then 83 comes along. Darryl Strawberry, he was a number 1 draft pick a few years earlier. He gets brought up from the minors, has kind of a struggles at first, and then wins Rookie of the Year. 84, Davey Johnson says, I need Dwight Gooden in my lineup. So part 1 is basically from 62 to 69 to the late 70s, to when they bring back Tom Seaver, to when they trade for Keith Hernandez, to when they trade for Gary Carter. And that kind of gets the stage set. Then you got the 83 season with Darryl Strawberry having his Rookie of the Year. 84, Dwight Gooden. And then starts the dominant period. They bring up Mookie Wilson. Kevin Mitchell joins the lineup in 86. Lenny Dykstra joins the lineup in 85. He becomes a part of the team in 85. Then they kind of bring the other pieces in between. They jettison a couple other pieces. They bring in George Foster, which was kind of a mixed feelings about that experiment, but we'll get into that in just a couple minutes. So part 2 talks about 85, 83, 84, and 85, which sets the stage for 1986, which is in part 3. Part 3 talks about the entire 86 season, how they were just so dominant. And the weird thing about it is that even though the 1986 New York Mets were dominant, I just want to look up something real quick in just a second. Bear with me. Even though the Mets had the most dominant run in that season. They won 108 games. They won the division by 21.5 games. They didn't have home field advantage in the National League Championship Series. So they meet meet the Astros, and at this time the Mets have two rivalries. They have the Cardinals in the East. They were their primary rival, and they wound up finishing 28 and a half games behind the Mets. And you had the Houston Astros. The Astros back then, they were an interesting team with Nolan Ryan and Mike Scott as your 1-2 punch. They both had really good seasons. I think Mike Scott won the Cy Young in '96. I almost call him Mike Scuff, but we'll get into that in just a second. They had Bass. They had Billy Hatcher. They had a lot of. They could play. They could ball. And Scott gets the win in game 1, 1-0 win. Mets win game 2. Astros win game 3. Mets win games 4, 5, and 6. And game 6 was, I remember a little bit from that series and that game. I remember coming home from school. The game had just basically started, and by the time I went to bed, the game was still going on. The game went, I think 15 or 16 innings, and it was a crazy game, back and forth. The Mets rallied from 3-0 down in the 9th. Take the lead in the 11th. Astros tie it up, and then the Mets scored 3. The Mets scored 3 in the top of the 16th and allowed 2, but Jesse Orosco got the last outs to get that win for the Mets. And they focused in game 4, part 4, and then they had the plane ride back. Oh my goodness. Excuse me real quick. Let me take a little sip of my beer. But then they talked about the plane ride back, and the answers you got about how much the New York Mets owed United Airlines varied because they caused so much damage to that airplane. One guy said, it cost $5,000 in damages. No, it cost $10,000. No, $25,000. This number kept rising. I think Darryl Strawberry said $100,000 in damages to one of their airplanes. Davey Johnson walks in. The Mets management wanted the players to pay for the damages. And then Davey Johnson goes to the locker room, goes, "Hey, I know that management wants you to pay for the damages for this airplane," but then he rips up the invoice and says, "Screw him! We're going to win the World Series," and the players go nuts. So part 4 focuses on the '86 World Series. Boston takes the first 2 games. By that time, the Mets are just absolutely whipped from that series against Houston. And they lose the first 2 games. Absolutely just battered. Every pitcher struggled. Dwight Gooden didn't quite have it in '86 like he did in '85. So, Mets go into Boston. They take 2 out of 3 there. They got game 6 at home. And actually, part 4 starts with where Mets fans and Boston Red Sox fans were during game 6. People were saying, I'm at a restaurant. There's a lady who said, I was at a restaurant with my parents. My dad brought transistor radio with him. One guy says, I was at the Met. I was at the Metropolitan going to see an opera, and I kept score there with a Mets fan. Mets fans were, it was crazy. I mean, one guy said, my friends had Journey tickets at the Meadowlands. It's like, Journey? Like, would you rather go see Journey at the Meadowlands or go to Shea Stadium and watch Game 6 of the World Series? Come on. But no, it went through the whole rigmarole of Game 6, then talk about Game 7, and how the Mets basically just absolutely killed any momentum the Red Sox had in Game 7, and absolutely just tore it up. So I think Mets win in 7. The parade is a really sad story that Dwight Gooden tells about where he was after the game you have to watch it for yourself, but it's just super sad story. And he's like, oh, I regret this. And it's about Bobby Ojeda and Keith Hernandez being late to the ticker tape parade. Then it tells about what happens afterwards. And that's where I'm going to get into here. In that, when I think of some of the great teams of the 1980s, I watching growing up, we had the dynasties. We had the Lakers in the NBA. We had Edmonton Oilers in the NHL, San Francisco 49ers in the NFL, to a lesser extent the New York Giants because of how many times they went to the playoffs, the Chicago Bears. I think about some of these teams that could have gone on great runs in the 1980s, and they just couldn't get it together for some reason. The Mets were one of those teams. The late 1980s Mets were one of those teams. They finished in second place in 85, the National League East. They blow away the National League East in the 86 season. They come up short in 87. 88, they go to the NLCS. They get beat by the Dodgers in 7. 89, that's when things start to kind of fall apart. It's funny, like, about some of the players who were from the 86 team that they got traded, or they got released, or they retired. Ray Knight, I think he left the team because they were only willing to give him a $5,000 raise for one more season. And he's like, no, I want to finish my career here. They traded Kevin Mitchell and a bunch of prospects to the Padres for Kevin McDowell. They trade Lenny Dykstra to the Phillies. I mean, trading to a divisional rival is, it's weird how things work out. So this kind of got me thinking this afternoon about some of the great teams that could have gone on these kind of runs, but missed out. One of them was certainly the 85 Bears. They have 30 for 30 on them. ESPN 30 for 30 has a documentary about the 85 Bears. And Richard Dent said, we could have won if everybody stayed healthy and nobody grew a big, and everybody kept their egos in check, and nobody was jealous of each other. We would have won 2, maybe 3 Super Bowls in a row. I don't doubt that, because that Bears team, that Bear team of 85 was unbelievable. Remember watching, it was the first Super Bowl when we lived in New York, back in 1986. Funny, it's when the Mets won the World Series, and how they just dominated the Patriots that game. They blew them out of the water. Absolutely blew the Patriots out of the water. And that team, I agree with Richard Dent in that they could have won 2, 3, maybe 4 Super Bowls in a row had Jim McMahon got hurt in 86 by Harvey Martin, or by Green Bay Packers. It was Harvey Martin. Can't remember. 87, the strike. 88, I think they got to the NFC Championship game and lost to the 49ers. It was 89. So 88 or 89, I can't remember which year, but they got the NFC Championship and they got shut out by the 49ers. So, but yeah, that's one franchise that could have won multiple championships besides the 86 Mets, the 85 Bears. I think the 86 Celtics, I know they had won a title earlier, a couple years early in 84, when they beat the Lakers in 7. And then we beat the Rockets in 6. And that team had, I think, 6 Hall of Famers on that team, 86. And they were considered one of the greatest. It was one of the greatest regular season runs of all time. And I think they lost only 15 games that season. But they had Larry Bird. They had Dennis Johnson. They had Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Bill Walton. I think if I'm not mistaken, is Danny Ainge in the Hall of Fame? If you're watching out there, if he's in the Hall, I think it's in the Hall of Fame. And I think they have 1 or 2 guys who are potential coaching Hall of Famers. Rick Carlisle certainly is in the conversation. I think he won the title with he won a couple titles with the Celtics as a player with the Celtics, but then he won one as a coach with the Dallas Mavericks. And these he could one day be considered a Hall of Famer for coaching and for his contribution as a player. He's on those teams back in the 80s. So, but certainly, I mean, if we go into the 90s, the Buffalo Bills, four straight times going to the Super Bowl and lost all 4 times. It's no small achievement to go back to the pinnacle 4 years in a row and come up short. In the late 80s, early 90s, the Oakland A's, Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire, Dave Stewart, Terry Steinbach, Lansford, Carney Lansford, a bunch of those guys. I mean, the Minnesota Twins, you could argue, they won 2 World Series titles 4 years apart, but 5 seasons apart, but they're considered in the conversation. Kirby Puckett, Kent Herbeck, Greg Gagne, Jack Morris, who won the 91 World Series MVP, pitched, I think, 2 shutout games in that series. Atlanta Braves, definitely in the conversation, especially in the 90s. They won 14 consecutive American, 14 or 13 consecutive American League East, National League East titles. Won 2 World Series, won only 1 World Series in 95. Montreal Expos, for sure. Larry Walker, Pedro Martinez, Moises Alou, Marquise Grissom, DeLeon DeShields, those guys, that team could have won the World Series in 94. Pittsburgh Steelers in the early 90s or the mid 90s, they had some pretty dominant teams. Certainly Philadelphia Eagles in the early 2000s. I mean, the list goes on and on. If you're watching out there, you can think of some teams that could have gone on some of these championship runs, only one title or championship during that stretch. Leave a comment, whether you're watching here or you're listening on Unhinged Radio later, or you're listening on the podcast. Leave a comment on Facebook or on all social media handles. Yeah, it's interesting to see how many teams could have won multiple titles. I mean, Philadelphia Flyers, 1990s, early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s Philadelphia Flyers with Eric Lindros, Eric Desjardins, John LeClaire, those guys, Ron Hextall in the pipes, Brian Boucher in the pipes, certainly could have won a Stanley Cup in Philadelphia. They would have burned the place down. But considering Philadelphia's checkered at best history with winning titles, it's the Phillies, the Eagles, the Flyers, and the 76ers, I think they've won 2 collective titles in the last 20 years, championship-wise, between the Phillies and the Eagles. So we're going to move on from this topic. We're going to go over to, speaking of Major League Baseball, we're going to talk about Major League Baseball for a little bit. So I was listening to my buddy Tom Goslowski, Goz from Godzilla Media. I was listening to his Getting Goz on the Go. And what he does is that he does a solo show it's released every Thursday. He records it on Wednesday night. And what he does, he talks about this basically what I do without drinking the beer and going online and going live, is that he talks about some of the big national news of the week. And today he talked about this week he talked about how one game wild card has kind of lost its touch. And I don't disagree with him, because last year's Major League playoffs was some of the best baseball I've ever watched, when they had the bubble. And they started off with, they had 8 teams automatically qualify for the playoffs, and they had 3-game series in different ballparks. And if you won the 3-game series, you advanced to the bubble. Depending on where you would go, I think if I remember correctly, the American League went to San Diego, and the National League went to either Globe Life Park or Minute Maid Park, if I'm not mistaken. Because that was one of those Texas stadiums, but they had 5-game series there, and then whoever advanced to those series would go to the championship series bubble, and from there they had the World Series bubble. I enjoyed those playoffs, even though my Yankees didn't. Had ran into the freaking Rays again. God, I can't. Ugh. They're my the Tampa Bay Rays are my. They're the white whale of the Yankees. I think the entire AL East this season has been the white whale for the Yankees. But even though the Yankees didn't make it to the World Series, you had the championship series. The Rays go up 3-0. Houston comes back with Dusty Baker as their manager. They came back, but then Tampa wins the ALCS, and they go to the World Series. They lose in 6 to the Dodgers. But let's kind of give me an idea, stemming from that conversation that he had. And I'm with Gaz on this, because he mentioned something like this. I'll give him credit for saying this. The Dodgers are going to win 100 games this year. They're going to finish second place in their division, unless some sort of miracle happens and they come back and they wind up winning the NL West. But they're going to win 100 games this year, finish in second place in the West, and they have to have it come down to a 1-game playoff, and they could potentially miss out on the playoffs. So I agree with him there that the wild card's kind of lost its luster in terms of the appeal, and I get it. It's for the big commercials, it's big for the ads, big for ad revenue. Yeah, whatever. Big deal there. But it's just kind of like you want to see the best teams advance. You want to see the best teams go to the playoffs. You want to see if they can go on a run. You want to see if they can get knocked off by an underdog. We haven't had too many underdogs in baseball these days, but I mean, you can say the Rays, but that's more small market, and they're depending on the small ball and good pitching to get to where they are. This kind of got me thinking. I know Major League Baseball is very, very slow to change, extremely slow to change. But hear me out, Major League Baseball. Hear me out, Rob Manfred. I know you're an unpopular guy with the fans and the players, but hear me out on this. Here's my idea. Instead of having a 162-game season, you shorten it. You shorten it to 150 games. You basically have three series of 50 where you play your games against your division rivals, you play your games against the leagues, and you have your interleague rivalries go on. So you have 50 games, separate into 3 separate seasons. Do a winner, overall winner in the first third, overall winner in the second third, overall winner in the third part of the season. So whoever wins those gets automatic bids to the playoffs. Then you have 5 extra spots, and whoever finishes with the best record in those spots, among those the 3 50-game races, I guess you could say, they earn their spots. So you see every team 1 through 8. You play a 3-game series in the first round, like you did last season. Then you play a 5-game series in the second round, like you do in the league division series, and then you play your 2 series, your championship series, your league championship series in 7 games. Then you have your World Series, because it builds it, because the 150 game series builds more excitement. If you have you're gonna have 12 less games you're gonna have 12 less games to worry about in terms of wear and tear for your players. And yeah, you're gonna lose 6 games of home box revenue, but who cares? You're getting money from all sorts of sources for television revenue. And I'll also, by the way, get rid of the blackout rule, please. Blackout rule is antiquated with the internet. With the age of the internet, the blackout rule is antiquated. Don't black out markets. Stop it. But that's my radical new idea. The radical idea is to have your season split into 50 games apiece. You have those 50 games played take a break in the middle. If another 50 games played, take another break in the middle. Then the last 50, that's where it really counts. And you have your all-star game in the middle of the season, July, and the second week of July. Yeah, we have that too. But I think it makes for a more exciting playoff scenario, especially when you get to the last 15 games. That's when the race really begins for the last 5 playoff spots, because you have your 3 winners already getting automatic bids for the 50 games, for the 50 game seasons, and then you just fill those last 8 spots in. You play your playing rounds, the best of 3 in the preliminaries. Then you have your divisional series in 5 games. Then you have your championship series in 7. Then you have your World Series in 7. I think that makes for exciting baseball. I think it makes it fun. I think it makes it more fun. It makes it matter, because 162 games, I don't know if you know, it's a slog. Same with 82 game seasons in the NHL and the NBA. They can be a bit of a drag, and the games don't count particularly early. When teams get off to a slow start, they'll start heating up, and the right teams will, the teams that you expect to go the playoffs are going to playoffs. But this kind of, I think, evens the level. I think evens the playing field a little bit for every single team, because you never know who's going to go to the playoffs next. Who know who's going to go to the playoffs? I mean, last year we saw 4, if I'm not mistaken, 4 AL East teams go to the play-in round, the preliminaries. The Miami Marlins went to a preliminary round, to the first round. They went to the 8. They ended up getting swept, but the Cincinnati Reds, they went to the playoffs for the first time in God knows how long. So I think having a shortened season with an expanded playoff race gets the fans excited. And I know Major League Baseball, you're slow to change. You drag your feet in the mud whenever it comes to change. But trust me, you're going to like this idea. And I am for hire. All right, so we're going to take a quick word from our sponsor. We're going to take a quick word from Manscaped for Belly Up, and we'll be back in just a quick second.
What's going on, sports fans? This is Dan Made of the MD's Fantasy Football Podcast, and I'm here to talk to you about Manscaped, where they want to let you know that the summer is here, but are you ready to unveil your beach bod? You're in luck. Our friends at Manscaped just launched their 4th generation performance package, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Complement your dad bod or six-pack with a trim from the leaders in male grooming. The sun is shining and calling your name, fellas, so join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for a hot guy summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Again, that's 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY today.
All right, folks, welcome back to Friday Happy Hour. No credentials required Friday Happy Hour. Let's get into the final segment of the evening, which is going to be NFL Week 2 picks. And before we get into the picks, I just want to have a little caveat here and talk about the New York Giants real quick. Now, people, including Giants fans, put last night's loss squarely on the shoulders of Daniel Jones. No. And there's a lot of concern about Daniel Jones and about how, he's considered a first-round bust and he works too many turnovers and this and that. I'm like, okay, I think Daniel Jones is getting the Sam Darnold treatment. He's going to be on his way out after the next season, because based on the fact that he has no help outside of Saquon Barkley, when Saquon Barkley's healthy, he's effective. He makes the Giants better. When he's not in the lineup, like we saw last season, Daniel Jones, the talent around Daniel Jones is not that great. It's not that great. Yeah, they picked up Kenny Golladay as a free agent from the Lions this past offseason, but it doesn't help Daniel Jones at all. And you get Evan Ingram at tight end, but last night there were some drop balls that could have not been drop balls, passes. There were short touchdowns, and Slayton had an awful miss. Awful miss. Dropped the ball as he's going in the end zone. And what's unfair is that all these losses are going to be on Daniel Jones's shoulders specifically, and it's not all his fault. He played a decent game, had 95 rushing yards and a touchdown, but the Giants, and specifically, I put the onus on Gettleman, the GM, specifically for not surrounding Daniel Jones with talent. This is what the problem was with the Jets when they had Sam Darnold, who was a really good quarterback, and I consider a really good quarterback, and he could have changed the Jets for the better. They didn't give him any receivers around him. They couldn't put a line in front of him to protect him. Mike McCagnon couldn't do that. Neither could Joe Douglas, so to speak. But this is gonna be he's gonna get the Sam Daniel Jones is gonna get the Sam Darnold treatment, which stinks. Which stinks because I think the Giants have Daniel Jones is not a terrible quarterback. There's some things he needs to work on, but I think that's square. I think that's part of the fact is that the Giants haven't put any talent around him. They haven't surrounded him with any enough talent at receiver specifically, and they haven't put a line in front of him to protect him. So you'll see him more times. You'll see him on the ground so much like Carson Wentz was last year. He'll start to grow weeds. And you can't. And I think this season's basically going to be the judgment season for Jones. And I think once the Giants find a quarterback in the draft, they're going to draft him, or they try to dangle some money in front of a wide receiver. I don't know if they were ever in contention to get Julio Jones. I doubt it. The Giants don't have enough to get to the playoffs, let alone sniff a Super Bowl. So this is on their management. Not so much on the play, not so much on the coach, Joe Judge, not so much on Daniel Jones. This is on specifically management for not giving Daniel Jones, giving a supposed franchise quarterback a chance to succeed. So, and it's gonna suck. It sucks. And Daniel Jones is probably gonna be holding a clipboard somewhere, be traded next season, and be holding a clipboard somewhere for the rest of his life, the rest of his career. So sad. All right, let's get to the picks. Cincinnati at Chicago. These first games are all 1 p.m. starts. So until I get to the 4:05 game. So Cincinnati at Chicago. I think we're going to see a lot more Justin Fields in this game. So I'm going to say Chicago wins 24-21. Bengals played pretty well last week to get the win in overtime with just enough time to kick a field goal. But I think Chicago is going to have a bounce back game. This is their bounce back game. So I'm going to say Chicago 24, Cincinnati 21. Houston at Cleveland. It's Cleveland's home opener after that dud they had in week 1. Houston's no longer going to be 0-17 like I thought they were. Played a lot better than I thought they would against Jacksonville. Wound up beating the brakes off them. But this is Cleveland. And I think Cleveland was my Super Bowl pick for the AFC. I got to stick with them. So I'm going to say Cleveland 31, Houston 17. Rams at Colts. I'm going Rams. Rams looked very impressive last week with Matt Stafford at quarterback. Looked very, very impressive. I think I predicted them to go to the NFC Championship game. I think Tampa's going to take the conference, but I have the Rams play exceptionally well on offense. They play really good defense, really tough defense. But yeah, and then they're traveling to Indianapolis, who had a couple of hiccups last week. But I think the Rams take this game. They take it 28-16. Buffalo at Miami. That is going to be. Bills need to find a way to bounce back. They had a letdown. They had a bit of a clunker last week against Pittsburgh. A couple mistakes on special teams. Miami, their defense hung in tough against the Patriots. They wound up stripping the ball. They played bend not break defense against the Patriots, against Mac Jones, and they did enough to not lose the game for the Dolphins. And I think this is gonna be my upset pick of the week. But I'm gonna say Miami wins this game. I think Miami's gonna beat Buffalo. I think Miami It's going to be a close game. It's going to be another one of those slugouts where it's going to be a low-scoring game. But I think Miami takes this game 17-14. I'm going to get the Patriots at my New York Jets. Here's the key to the game for the Jets. Protect Zach Wilson. Give him time to throw. Let him do some magic because he had a slow start in the first half last week in Carolina, as did the rest of the team. And they fell behind early, rallied back, and could have won that game. But they had trouble protecting Zach Wilson. He's hurried a lot, made some errant throws when he didn't have to. He threw an interception, but also threw 2 touchdowns. So, but they got, and I think part of the other thing is that they got to control the ball. They got to get the run game going a little bit more. They got to control the clock. They got to keep Mac Jones off the field. So, it pains me to say it, but I think the Patriots continue their winning streak over the Jets, but it's going to be closer than people think. I think Patriots will take this one 20-17. Hurts my heart a little bit. That's not just heartburn, but it hurts my heart just a little bit to say that. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I need to see the Jets win a game, especially against the Patriots, but it's going to be, I'm just going to say this to every Patriots fan out there. MetLife Stadium's going to be loud. It's going to be loud. I think it'll be really loud for the first time since the 2019 opener against the Bills when they almost won that game. But that crowd's going to be loud. It's going to be noisy. It's going to be something. It's going to be a loud game. I think that'll help give the 12th man for the Jets right there. Is going to for the Jets defense. It's going to be the crowd. But I still think the Patriots take this one. 49ers at Eagles. Eagles were this very surprising thing. I think I picked them last week. I picked the 49ers last week too. 1-0 teams. This is going to be a shootout. This is going to be another shootout that the 49ers are going to get themselves into. Philadelphia took control of their game against Atlanta early and wound up just flying away with the victory. No pun intended. But it's going to be another shootout at the link. I think Jalen Hurts is coming into his own as quarterback. I got him on my fantasy teams. I'm not going to lie there. He's creating some havoc. But I think San Francisco's defense is going to be San Francisco's defense is going to be the X factor in this game. I think they'll make Hurts hurry up a lot, especially the defensive line, their front seven. They're going to run Jalen Hurts ragged. I think they're going to force him to make mistakes. I think San Francisco wins this game 38-33. Raiders at Steelers. And both teams came with victories last week. Pittsburgh had a tougher time with Buffalo, and the Raiders had to come back to win their game. They were down 14-0, and they wound up winning the game in overtime on Peyton. It was Monday night with Peyton and Eli, which, by the way, I have an article up on bellyupsports.com. You can check that out. I did a review of the first ever Manning broadcast, which was fun. Spoiler alert, it was fun. But this game is going to be a Sunday afternoon game. Raiders at Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's defense is going to give the Raiders a lot of trouble. I think Pittsburgh pulls away at the end. It's going to be a close game, but I think Pittsburgh's going to pull away towards the end. I'm going to say Steelers 21, Raiders 17. New Orleans at Carolina. I think it's going to be another potential for a shootout game. Carolina's defense is tough. So is the since defense, but Jameis Winston had those 5 touchdowns last week. Sam Darnold had a pretty okay game against the Jets. Threw an interception, threw a long bomb touchdown pass to Robbie Anderson. I think this is going to be another potential for a shootout game. Granted, their defenses are good, but it's going to be coming down to the quarterbacks. I think Jameis Winston's going to make less mistakes than Sam Darnold. So I'm going to say Saints 31, Carolina 28. And the last 1 o'clock game, Denver at Jacksonville. Jacksonville had their just got taken to the woodshed against Houston last week. Denver took the Giants to the woodshed, and it's just interesting to see Denver start the year off 2 games in a row with 2 road games consecutively. Jacksonville is a young team. Trevor Lawrence is a okay quarterback right now. He's gonna grow. He's gonna get better, but right now he's just an okay quarterback. He had struggles last week against Houston. I think Denver's defense is going to give him some more troubles. I think the Broncos will do just enough to win this game. It'll be a low-scoring game. I'm going to say Denver 24 and Jacksonville 21. All right, let's go to the 4:05 and 4:25 games. Minnesota at Arizona. This is going to be entertaining. This is going to be an entertaining game. I think Kirk Cousins is in trouble. And Chandler Jones, a 5-pack of sacks last week. I think he continues that trend. Minnesota's going to have to depend on Dalvin Cook a lot. I think Arizona is going to win this game it's going to be a close game. I'm going to say Arizona. Arizona's going to win this game 28-20. Atlanta at Tampa Bay. Take the Bucks. Take the Buccaneers. Atlanta was putrid last week against the Eagles of all teams. I think 10 days off for the Buccaneers is going to do some good, especially with some older guys in that team, like a certain quarterback who's 14. I think he's 17 days older than me. That's the only thing we have in Tom Brady and I have in common is that we share the same astrological sign. But no, take Tampa. If you're a betting person, take Tampa and the points. Dallas at Chargers. Chargers came out with a close win last week. Dallas took the Buccaneers to took them to the end. Took it to the last 2 seconds of the game. And didn't take their first lead until late in the game. This is going to be another close game for both teams, I think. I think I'm going to take, but I think I'm going to take I'm going to take the Cowboys in this game. I think the Cowboys do just enough to win this game. I think it's going to be 20. I think it's going to be a 24-20 win for Dallas. Tennessee at Seattle. Tennessee has the chance to get back on track after their just awful game against Arizona. They're playing another NFC West team. I think defensively is going to give the Titans offense a lot of trouble. 12th man in Seattle is going to be a big difference. It's going to be a loud stadium at Lumen Field. I'm going to say Seattle takes this game 30-13. And lastly, the nightcap. Kansas City at Baltimore. Another fun game. Kansas City, I think, takes this game. Baltimore had the chance to win the game last Monday night and didn't take the chance. They just couldn't hold the ball long enough, and they couldn't. For some reason they struggled against the Raiders. They had a 14-0 lead and they blew it. I guess Kansas City, what they're going to have to do, and this is my cheat code. Let me just say this. For any NFL team out there who's playing Kansas City, this is your cheat code. Run the ball. Run the ball. Win the possession game. You have to win the possession game against Kansas City because once Kansas City's offense gets in the field, in Cleveland, we saw this last week in the Browns game when the Chiefs beat the Browns. The Browns couldn't keep the ball long enough on possession to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. And that was the big difference in last week's game. It's going to be the big difference in this week's game. Baltimore, Greg Roman, strong run game. You gotta win the run game. You gotta win the possession game. Gotta keep the Chiefs off the field. It's gonna be a low scoring affair. I think Baltimore will do just enough to keep the ball off the field so the Chiefs won't score every time. But at the same time, the Chiefs are fast. They're a fast team. Speed kills. It's gonna be a close game. I think the Chiefs will do just. Well, I think the Chiefs will do just enough to win this game. I'm going to take the Chiefs in this one 31-28. In the Monday night game, nightcap on Monday night, Denver at Green Bay. Take the Packers. Take the Packers. Aaron Rodgers is pissed. And a pissed off Aaron Rodgers is not good for any team that faces them. And they're playing the Lions. And I feel for the Lions. I think Rodgers passes for at least 4 touchdowns, has at least 4 touchdowns passing. I think the Packers defense will have a much better effort against the Lions because the Lions are the Lions. So, and they played a good enough game. They played good last week against the Niners. Against the Niners, but no, this is definitely, it's a Monday night game in prime time. Aaron Rodgers is going to be pissed off, and he's going to wind up throwing at least 4 touchdowns, and this is going to be a wash. I'm going to say Packers 38, Detroit 17. And on that note, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Friday Happy Hour, presented by Belly Up Sports in association with Godzilla Media. Again, check out the socials. Twitter.com and Twitter, Instagram, at BellyUpNCR, Facebook.com/BellyUpSportsNCR, and on YouTube, no credentials required. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Leave a review. That'd be awesome. And until next time, I'm Ryan McCarthy. I've been your host. Cheers. Watch football. Relax. Be safe. Be responsible. Cheers, everyone.